It's the Accounting Talent Podcast. We talk about all things accounting and all things talent. I'm here with my co-host, Jeff Phillips, and we are talking about talent stacks. Jeff, we've touched on this in a previous episode. Just remind us exactly what a talent stack is when it comes to accounting firms. This is a world you know well.
I borrowed it from the phrase technology stack. Have you ever heard that phrase, Rob?
Oh, yeah, we know tech stack, of course, yeah.
Yeah, so your tech stack is an integrated system on how you deliver value to your clients, and it ought to be efficient, it ought to be easy, it ought to be turnkey, it ought to be repeatable. And so as I started to think about the talent crisis that accounting firms are facing, we wanted to find creative solutions, and there's a lot of opportunities out there. And so we wanted to come up with a concept to help owners think about where they could go and pull from to find creative staffing solutions to staff up their firm, deliver value to their clients, and even achieve more profitability, which is possible in a time where it's hard to hire. So the talent stack is 3 or 4 different ways to put talent assets into your firm that in a repeatable and turnkey and easy process.
Yeah, and that's widen the breadth of owners there, because it's anybody that's hiring, isn't it? So it could be managers, leaders, partners, accounting firm owners, equity people, anyone that's involved in bringing on new staff. That's where this show is aimed, right?
Well, like a technology stack, it's not just one product, right? And no accounting operator, no accounting team leader is just going to buy one piece of technology that fits all. The exact same concept for any hiring manager in accounting should be thinking about their organizational chart as a talent stack with different players and different types of players to reach their goals. You're absolutely right.
Whose job, in your experience, Jeff, is it to hire talent in an accounting firm? We hear different things. Marketing's department, it's in the individual departments. Department is the managing partner, it's the HR people. Who's really taking ownership here? Who do you talk to the most?
This is the leader's responsibility. If we're talking to a small firm, it's the managing partner, it's the partnership group. In a mid-sized CPA firm here in the States, Rob, it's the partner group, it's the CFO. You get these things done through great HR teams or great recruiting partners, but the leader is the person responsible for building the machine that delivers the goods and services. It's tough to delegate, and so it's got to start at the top.
Well, the premise here is that the talent crisis has got many firms stuck with the problem of finding and keeping talent. But as we're going to uncover, there are opportunities for staffing firms with creative solutions. So just summarize for us, perhaps in headline form, what is the talent crisis? What are we dealing with?
There are more job opportunities than there are people to fill them.
It's a candidate-driven market, as they say in recruitment.
Yeah, my saying, Rob, is the war for talent is over and the talent won.
Yes, hiring good people is at a premium. Absolutely sure. We touched on some of the reasons for this, but it's a pandemic now, isn't it, in many respects? There are other sectors suffering, but accounting and finance particularly are suffering. Accounting
and finance are particularly suffering. So turnover is a term we use to define people who are voluntarily leaving. So, a firm maybe under $10 million is probably facing about a 20% turnover a year. That's 20% of your accounting staff that's leaving for other opportunities. And in a headline level, the reason why that's happening is changing opportunity costs. There's better money available, better flexibility available in other opportunities. The accounting profession is still noble. It is still an amazing calling, in my opinion, to help small businesses and people not only be compliant with regulations, but also to look through your windshield of their business and see the future. And accountants do such a great job doing that. We've just lost our value proposition to talent. They are there. Yes, there are more jobs. There are people to fill them. There are still lots of candidates who are looking for jobs in accounting.
And that's a message of hope. You talked about the weak value prop for accounting, and the profession globally has to answer to that, particularly the professional bodies, the governing bodies, the societies and everyone else. And they are doing their best to rebrand the profession and make it attractive to people at all levels and stem the tide of the churn. But this is a message of hope, isn't it? You're saying there are still opportunities to make hires in this current environment.
Yes, I mean, in one of my roles, I own a staffing firm, and we are placing remote hires here in the United States, U.S.-based remote full-time talent into accounting firms, in 30 to 45 days. It's just, was there a willingness to stop looking in your market and to look elsewhere? That's one creative solution, and it's certainly a message of hope because it's addressing a major preference of the talent. Remember, the talent race is over and the talent won. Let's figure out what they want and go talk to them, connect them into your firm.
And the days of being able to recruit to your firm for people within a 20, 30, 50-mile radius in your locale, people that can come to your offices, work on your high street, wherever you are, those days are long gone, aren't they? Not only are those people not within that vicinity, but even if they are, they don't want necessarily to be doing that commute into the office. So it leads us naturally and maybe even forces us to look at remote options.
Here in the States, Rob, it's really simple. Like if you look at a market like I'm in a small town called Pensacola, Florida, and there's probably 200 CPAs in Pensacola. I don't know. Maybe there's not 200. So if you're hiring here locally and you need somebody in your office, you've got a 1 in 200 shot. Oh, and by the way, they're all fully employed. Where essentially everybody that wants a job has a job in the United States. I'm sure it's the same in every country that somebody's listening right now. But if you zoom out, Pensacola has 200 CPAs, but America has 665,000. And we've surveyed the talent. You know what they want? They want to work from home. They want to work in long, uninterrupted chunks. They want to work in many ways in their terms. And so as a hiring leader, and this is why it is the leader who has to address this, if you can adjust your strategy to employ remote staff, and that means you don't care where they work, and build your firm around that and build culture around that, you can staff. And as we get into the talent stack, it's not just full-time. There are multiple ways to build a team to deliver excellent value and even maybe grow your bottom line. But the prerequisite to all this is a willing to get out of the office. I'm not saying end the office. It's the mothership. If you have an office, that's great. But now you're building what we call a hybrid team, where there's some team members internally, there's some team members who are remote. You can train, you can build culture, you can have great client success. Yeah, it takes some change, but it is worth the change.
Let me take you Pensacola, Florida, and raise you to London. In England, I spoke to somebody who works for one of the world's largest professional bodies just recently, and he's very high up. He has a global role. He lives just outside London. He has to get back into the office a couple of times a week. He said, it cost me £35 each journey on the train and an hour and a half. Now, 35, what was that? About $40, $50. But you times that by 2, and then you add that to 3 or 4 days a week, and you start to see what it's costing him to get into the office and walk to the train station, and the other end, get off the tube or the subway, whatever it is, and get to his office, and all that time. And that starts to add up to thousands of dollars, pounds in a year, thousands of hours in a year, not doing anything productive. So the argument's won, isn't it now, that remote and hybrid, if you can't embrace that, you're not going to be competitive. You might even be irrelevant.
Absolutely. And we want to be productive. We want every hour to count. And I'll flip that. I had a conversation with a CAS practice leader who they have an office, very large firm in London. And I might get the number wrong because it's been about 3 years since I've had this conversation, but he was the managing partner of a large firm with an office in London and told me their cost to place a senior accountant at a desk in their office was about £7,000 a month or something ridiculous like that. And so he was looking at it from the corporate finance side and the P&L side of the business. It was far more efficient for them to hire somebody from their home if they can arrange that professionally than to bring in somebody into their office. And so they're looking to downsize their corporate footprint from real estate, save tons of money there, and then employ a team of full-time and part-time remote staff in England to be able to hire. And they're making more money by reducing those number of desks.
So this whole conversation is predicated on the accounting firms out there being willing to hire remote staff. So we're making the business case for that. We're saying the alternative is not particularly viable. When you have conversations like that, what tend to be some of the objections, the fears, the obstacles to going remote?
Yeah. The one I hear most often is I can't create a company culture when I have a hybrid team of some office people here and remote people there.
I can't control things like I want to.
Yes, it's changed. The objective has changed, and I could point you in the direction of 50 fully remote U.S.-based accounting firms, CAS practices, even traditional CPA firms who have thriving cultures with there is no office. So it's culture, Rob. And the other one is training. We can't train our people. We can't make sure that they have the skills to deliver the value. And the third is we don't know what they're doing. If I don't see you, then I assume you're just not working because you're at your house. And there's a lot of anxiety about, remote ploy XYZ. We don't know what they're doing today because I can't lay eyes on them. And I understand that anxiety, but there is an easy, workable vision for every one of those that you can build remote teams and build culture and train and know exactly how the workflow is doing. I mean, as far as the knowing what they're doing with really good project management software and good processes, you actually will be better and more efficient and more productive because you are building a system to manage productivity and observe productivity objectively, not if I see you, then you're productive.
So we're talking about full-time remote hires. This is the new talent stack for accounting firms. Give us a sense of the opportunity out there. Jeff, you may have some stats numbers from AccountingFly, perhaps.
Yeah. So everything is predicated on a willingness to hire remote. And one of the core options is to hire domestic full-time remote staff for any position, tax, audit, CAS, at the manager level, the senior level, the entry level. Rob, everyone talks about accounting, the talent and accounting crisis, right? The company that I helped found, AccountingFly, all they do is place full-time US-based remote CPAs into accounting firms. And you want to talk about a talent crisis? We get 1,000 applications a week for US-based remote jobs. Now, tell me there's a talent crisis when we have more candidates than we have jobs to fill. We usually get about 8 times more applicants for a remote position than the identical position attached to any location for any size city in the United States. And we ran that study on every major job board that there is here in the United States, like Indeed and ZipRecruiter and Monster.com. The average time to fill for a tax manager position here in the United States, if you're a middle market or a small firm, is about 1.5 years. Oh. The average time to fill a remote job is about 45 days. Right? So think of the pain that shrinks going from 1.5 years of missing a tax manager in a firm in a central role. Now, who's covering all that work? Everybody else. Now we're placing more pressure on the staff. And what happens in the U.S. firms, and probably anywhere, is that empty desk, so to speak, is creating more work for the people on their team at the same pay rate. Now, what do you think happens to those overworked, overburdened staff who are filling in for the empty desk?
They leave.
They start to leave.
Yeah.
That's right. They leave. They are leaving for remote CPA positions with U.S. firms where they're getting a 20% pay bump and working from their office at home.
And presumably client service would suffer when you're stretching people to the max, that you're not fulfilling service levels, are you?
Your responsiveness goes down. Yes, the quality of delivery, absolutely. You're overwhelmed, and there's enough. Firms can make a lot of money doing this type of work, and there's no need to put themselves in this position because it's really hurting the teams.
So you mentioned domestic hires there, Jeff. That's for you Americans, that's people that are based in the mainland US or in one of your states. You can go beyond that, can't you? Because England's pretty small. You're only ever 200 miles here before you hit the ocean, one way or another in England. But we still think we're the capital of the world, but we can't recruit from the UK. We've got to look elsewhere. So you go outside domestic, don't you?
Yes, and I'm speaking it from a U.S. centric point of view, but a full-time credentialed hire, whether it's in the United States, we're talking about a CPA or an enrolled agent, or a non-credentialed accountant, but someone who understands the local laws, the national tax system here in the United States. So that's what I mean by domestic. For some positions, you ought to stick in your country because of the different rules and laws between the United Kingdom and the United States. That doesn't mean you shouldn't hire internationally, which is one of the other pieces of the talent stack is through offshoring. But here in the United States, you can fill a remote position in one sixth of the time that you can while waiting for a headhunter to find you a local person. If they ever do, I know firms, Rob, that have waited for 2 years to fill a tax manager position here in the United States by not choosing to go remote.
Okay, so what's next? You got the domestic hires where they become a full-time member of your staff. There's a freelance option, Jeff, isn't there?
So gig economy is alive and well in accounting. 25% of the labor force in the United States identifies themselves as a freelancer, meaning I won't take a full-time job from you if you offered it to me. I am an independent professional. I see myself as a freelance independent consultant. And so when you think about a quarter of our labor force sees themselves as that, and I have a feeling that is the same across multiple countries. If you're not addressing if freelance and interim is not part of your recruitment strategy, you can't win the race for talent because you're leaving candidates an opportunity on the table. So freelance is a remarkable opportunity, and I've got some examples that might be helpful.
Let's hit them.
So, I mean, you really break it up into 3 opportunities with freelance. But remember, Rob, these are remote hires. This is not somebody in Pensacola or in London necessarily. So kind of break up freelance into 3 ways. Like one is like interim. So an interim hire is somebody it's turnkey. There's a short-term replacement. There's a clear start date and a rough end date. This works really well in tax season. So hiring a tax preparer who knows your tax software, who does this professionally for a few firms during busy season, and then give you 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 hours a week just to fill in. Now, what I love about this is you can have a mini army of tax preparers that come in here in the States, let's say from January to April 15th. Bringing that tax team in adds capacity into the firm. It reduces that strain and that overwork, and it gets the work done, and it gets the work done right. You can think of freelancers in terms of fractional work. I need a bookkeeper every month. Maybe I need 15 hours a week, but we can't necessarily afford or don't have the transactional volume to buy 40 hours a week. So I hire a fractional person, a part-time person remotely, because I don't want to have to do this role myself. And then there's project-based specific freelancers. So great example for a firm is maybe you've signed up an audit client, and the audit client is a construction company or a mining company, and you don't have any auditors, any CPAs that know the type of accounting that delivers for construction companies or whatever the client is. So go and pick from a pool of qualified applicants who are not only good at the skill, but good at being project-based resources that come in and do the job. What's great about this is think about the money you save just by hiring somebody on a temporary basis and a full-time basis. And I think a lot of firms have hired like sort of lower level part-time help, but I mean plugging essential talent into the firm on a temporary basis so you don't have to hire full-time. The economics work really nicely here because you're just paying for the hours worked. You're paying for a result. You're paying for a short time. we see a lot of project-based people come in when there's a maternity leave situation or a paternity leave situation. This should be a quarter of your hiring activity is bringing in project-based interim, freelance gig talent.
And the outsourced space generally, that describes these interim posts, doesn't it? These freelance posts, you can take these people, domestically, but you could get them from India or the Philippines or South America or South Africa, wherever it is, on a part-time interim freelance basis.
Yeah, and now we're talking about what I think is the third category of the talent stack, which is outsourcing or offshoring. And so that's where you look at the unique skills and talents of people who are in countries where there's an economic advantage to you hiring them. So we think about the Philippines, we think about India, we think about Mexico, where there are entire companies set up to serve the accounting profession or corporate accounting and finance teams that can plug in skilled and trained and secure people to do work like bookkeeping, to do work like reconciliation, even setting up payroll for inside a corporate accounting team or for a public accounting firm that does payroll for their clients. And so the benefit of that is I'm finding turnkey talent at a fraction of the cost. Rob, the Big Four have hundreds of thousands of employees in India. I mean, it's driving the economy of India, which is a massive economy in the first place, but there is such a great benefit for the talent in India to work for US-based or United Kingdom-based companies, and it creates a major wealth creation, job creation in India, but it creates an easy way to find talent in the United States or in England or in any country where there's where it makes the economic advantage to go and hire them.
So, Jeff, we're going to go on to the final category now, which is outsourcing or offshoring. But just to summarize, we've got the domestic remote option, we've got the freelance remote option, and then this is going outside your shores and looking at outsourcing or offshoring. So just unpack that one a little bit for us.
Right. So offshoring is essentially hiring turnkey talent that is trained, that is secure, working in a secure environment, that can come into your firm at a far reduced cost than domestic talent of any kind, because they are working in a country where the economics are completely different than in England or the United States. So an example of countries where you would find talent like this is Philippines, India, Mexico is now getting into this game. Even South Africa is now getting into this game. So there are entire companies set up that serve the accounting profession, that is matching accounting teams up with offshore talent teams to come in and do certain tasks. So the advantage to the employer is I can readily find talent available at a greatly reduced cost. Now, where I like to see teams investigate these types of hires is you can hire teams in India or the Philippines for examples like accounting work, bookkeeping work, journal reconciliation, setting up payroll, even setting up tax returns to go back to the UK-based, US-based tax manager. One example that comes to mind that I think is a really interesting one is the Big Four. So the Big Four hire tens, if not hundreds of thousands of staff in India. So much of the tax preparation work and audit prep work, payroll generation is happening offshore in India. They are investing in real estate and training and universities to take advantage of this economic difference between like U.S. economy and the Indian economy. It's exciting because it's globalization that is that you can touch and feel yourself if you're in the United States and employ Indian-based talent or Philippines-based talent at a fraction of the cost, but get very trained, highly skilled talent working in a secure environment. And so even if, I mentioned the Big Four, Rob, but if you're a 3-person firm, you should be looking at this because, one, it changes the economics of the firm. You can hire people at a much lower rate per hour, but get quality work done. And there's also a lot of there's also a lot of mythology about this too. Like, well, if I hire somebody internationally, they can't communicate with my clients. That is not the case. These are people that are trained in great email communication and service desk level communication. They're operating as executive assistants to US-based or UK-based executives or partners. And so I think there's a lot of fear around this, but I think there is a lot of opportunity as well.
It's super exciting. Beautifully demonstrated the benefits and risks of these three options. Just to summarize for this show, Jeff, I'd like you to outline for us, we're talking about talent stack here, outline the problem, outline the solution, and outline what might be a next step for people listening that want to dip their toes into this.
If you've ever tried to hire somebody, you realize how frustrating it is. And that's because there's more job opportunities than there are qualified people to fill them. And so what got you here is not going to get you where you want to go. We all want to take our businesses to the next level. We all want to have a higher enterprise value and achieve greater growth and profits. And we want predictable and reliable hiring. And the most obvious way to have predictable and reliable hiring is by changing your talent stack, keeping your office-based team, beginning to add domestic full-time remote staff, beginning to add domestic remote freelance interim project-based staff, and beginning to add offshore-based talent at a great cost advantage to yourself in a way that is predictable and repeatable and turnkey, so the talent challenge is not so great. And so what the next step would be is really simple, is to assess your own willingness to hire remote people and to investigate what it would cost to get there and what it would cost you in terms of work to get there, implementing things like project management software, which, Rob, I think we should talk about. Like, how do you implement a great hybrid team? And let's address that at a future episode. But the first step is, are we willing to hire somebody that doesn't work in our office?
Sweet. Really wraps it up. Jeff Phillips, thank you so much for your insights today and shining a light on the opportunities that come from considering a remote workforce. It's been great. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob.